everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Motivation in That, where we take hot mess to high potential. And I am really excited for what I consider to be one of the first installments of this Will You Be My Neighbor type of feel and series to Motivation in That as we go into 2026. And kicking it off with people who are local to where I live in Southwestern Pennsylvania, specifically Indiana, PA, and learning about the people who have made their home here, who bring their businesses here, who are invested in this community in ways that are so important. And if you have noticed any of the artwork on the episodes that we are posting, the gentleman I have today did my wonderful headshots for it. So I'm excited to talk about what we're going to chat about today, Jon, with you and learn more about your photography organization, Jon Blanchard Photography. But really, it's a great kind of kickoff topic because we're in a world where we all have our iPhones. We all have these, things that we feel are fancy and make us to be able to put filters on stuff and make us, feel like we don't need the experts as much anymore, whether it's through AI or anything else. And I think it's a great reminder of just how important it is to rely on people who have made this their career, their business, support local, and to learn just about the journey of how we get there in the first place, because a lot of us are in our second, third careers at this point, and I think it's going to be a great discussion. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jon Blanchard, our guest today. And Jon, I'm going to have you tell us a little bit about you. How the heck did you end up in Indiana, PA? Because I know this isn't a born and raised conversation, and what you do and how you're involved kind of in our community here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you. It's a pretty long story of how I got here, but I've lived here longer than I've lived anywhere else at this point. So I came here originally in 2008 to go to school, and I never left. And you know what? I flirted with the idea of leaving multiple times, and as recently as a year or two ago. But the more that I look into those other options, I just really decided that I love this place. It's a great place to raise a family. It's a great community. It's a great little town. So I'm really, really happy here.
And for those that don't know where Indiana, PA is, we're about an hour and a half east of Pittsburgh. So we're easily able to get into an urban center. We've got some other large towns, small cities kind of around our area. We have a university here. So there very much is this kind of mix of the rural urban feel in our just kind of general town. But you go 2 miles outside and you're in farms and Amish country. So there is so much of a mix of what we have available to us. But when we're looking at you're literally a mile down the street from me is where your studio is, which is so convenient, especially when a mile down the street in Pittsburgh is 20 minutes. This is, 2. And, you look back to how you've gotten to where you are now, which is this gorgeous studio right here in town. You've got amazing clients that you're working with, everything from Grammy nominated artists to our local sports teams. How has this kind of venture been for you? So could you picture this is where you'd be today? Did you have confidence this is where you'd get to?
No, definitely not. For a long, long time, this was just a dream. I didn't think, granted, things could always be better, things could always be worse, but the idea that I get to do what I love as a job is just every day I kind of pinch myself. Not many people are that lucky, so I definitely don't take that for granted. I've got great clients, like you said. Without them, I wouldn't have this opportunity. So I forget what the actual question was.
Just looking back over your journey, how, what's it felt like, I guess, to watch your business grow from what you really was a passion at first into now this is the main thing. This is what brings in the bread for you.
Yeah. So for a long, long time, it was just a hobby without even a thought of anything else. And then I would say around 2012 or so, I began taking on some really, really small jobs, just again, more for fun. But people were like, "Hey, let me throw you some money." And I was like, "You're actually pretty good at this. I'd like to pay you for it." So I'm like, "Well, if you'd like to pay me, then I'll take it." But I really just love doing this. Did that for several years, and I ended up my business income started surpassing my day job income, which wasn't really difficult because I wasn't making a lot of money what I was doing before. But Yeah, I then just in 2017 in January, I took a big leap of faith and I quit my job, which if anybody knows, anybody in the photography industry, especially in the North, January is the worst time to quit, your stable income job and to start a photo studio. I took about 5 or 6 weeks off. I renovated my first studio space, which this is now my third studio. I've kind of like doubled in space every few years, kind of outgrown my space, but I took that leap of faith and thankfully it worked out. I had a lot of repeat clients. And then as I grew, as my business grew and my costs grew, my pricing, of course, grew. And luckily, I had a lot of clients who understood that and people that valued my work. And I'm able to, continue to be where I am today. So.
And so when you think about that leap that you took and setting that up, as someone who has been going through this whole standpoint of writing an operational plan and getting the state to say, yes, you're a business, and what do the taxes look like? And it's really intimidating, especially when you're a one person kind of deal. Have you learned a lot of that yourself? Is that something where you've worked on connecting with your network to say, well, what do I do here? And did I take the right next steps? Do you have your own photography group network that you work with that you can bounce ideas off? What does that look like from a support standpoint?
Yeah, I'd say it's a little bit of all of those things you touched on. A lot of reading, a lot of YouTube, a lot of, being a photographer and being a business person are totally different things. And I genuinely don't really love the business side of it. I'd rather just do my work and do the things I enjoy, but that's not the reality. The reality is I spend 90% of my time on a computer, and the other 10% taking photos. So yeah, a lot of reading, a lot of research, but then I do have a nice group of photography friends that I've leaned on, and we've kind of bounced things off of each other over the years. We've all kind of grown together. So, my very best friend in the world, other than my wife, is a photographer here locally, and she's super, super organized, and she really loves the numbers and the business side of it. So she's a really good asset as well.
That's awesome. And when talking about, you mentioned, your prices grew, and at first it was just people kind of tossing money to you. It's one of the things I've struggled with, and I know I had this kind of for a placeholder later on, but this just fits right here. The conversation of what I do is valuable, and this is a service, and it's my time, my energy that goes into this. How do you start to come up with what's this worth, and what do clients or customers, what are they willing to pay to meet me at? What have been some of those, I guess, decisions you've had to make along the way of, is this too much? Is this not enough? I'm sure, and I know you've got a special you'll be running when this comes out of, mini headshots. So there's ways to still be accessible, I guess, to folks that maybe can't do those larger packages. But how have you valued yourself, and how has that changed as your skill sets improved in order to kind of put a number sign on what you do?
Yeah, it's a really, really tricky thing to put a number on. So, especially in the art world, it's really easy for someone to look at a photograph and say, well, that's an 8x10. It should be this much money, but that's not really how it works. It's all the work that goes into it, all the years of work that I've done behind the scenes, and all the gear that I own, all the software I own, all the time I've spent perfecting my craft. So all of that goes into the pricing model that I have. And to be honest, for a lot of years, I was just kind of throwing numbers at a wall and seeing what stuck and thinking like, well, I think I would pay this if I was in the client's shoes. And that really doesn't work. It really took me until about 4 years ago. I put together an actual business plan and did a cost of doing business worksheet and figured out what I need to make to be profitable. A lot of people, there's a big misconception in this profession where, because there are so many individuals that typically charge like a couple $100 for instance, a whole photo shoot and all the photos. It's really, really, really difficult to be profitable with that type of model. So what's happening is a lot of people are just struggling. You might have a photographer might have 10 clients a week, but if they're making $100-200 a client, they're not really able to sustain that. Especially if you're talking about having a studio space and all those costs that are involved with that. So it really came down to figuring out my cost of doing business and what I need to make minimum, you know, with my average amount of clients per week, and kind of had to step back and take it, kind of a boring look at it, you know, like to be creative and make art. But at a certain point, if you'd like to keep doing this as a profession, you got to kind of know what your costs are and where you need to be at.
Well, and I think with that, the pitch. So I remember when we sat down and we first talked about, hey, what does a headshot photo shoot look like? And you really like, well, yeah, how many outfits do you want? Like, what comes with this is, it's not a rush job. It's not to turn the table, as we would say in restaurant industry. It is we're going to make you look good. What do you want to do? How are you going to be comfortable with it? So when you came up with what would make you unique in those standpoints, did that kind of come naturally to you? Was that something where it's just your experience? You're like, well, this makes sense. Like, it seems like this isn't being offered right now.
Yeah, it's kind of a combination again. There are some photographers that do have a similar model as I do, where you do have this extended session. I've never met someone that takes it quite as far. I have 0 time limit on my sessions. It's kind of extreme, and it was kind of learned over time, where for a long time I had a 1-hour photo session, and I thought, man, this is just really crammed. I'm going to make it a 2-hour photo session, and then I decided to do a 2.5-hour session. So, and I started thinking about it, and the more I'm realizing, these clients, they want a lot of looks. They want a lot of options. And then, they might not end up choosing these things, but they want to at least have the option and see what they look good in, see what different lighting they look good in. So I decided, you know what, why are we rushing to cram all these things in? High school seniors that want to go to 6 different locations. I've had times where we've literally done, back in the day where I had time limits, we're rushing to get to all these locations, but we're only able to spend 5-10 minutes at each spot. So we're just driving all over the place. So that I just kind of realized this makes sense. Most people aren't going to exploit this, to make it too extreme. And typically, when I do spend more time with clients, they end up purchasing more options. So it tends to work out for everyone. I'm not rushed. They're not rushed. The more time I spend with someone, the more comfortable they tend to feel. And then the more that shows on camera. So it just works out all around.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say is, I may sit down and say, well, I need just one image out of this. But once you realize, well, I looked good in all 3 of those outfits, it would be nice to have some variety in what gets shown. And, it also builds that confidence in the person getting their picture taken. I'm sure you've seen, how many people come in and they're like, what do I do with my hands? What do I do here? And, it takes a special quality of a photographer to put someone at ease, especially if they're not used to being in front of a lens or, having all the eyes on them, even if it's only 2 or 3 people in the room. And I don't want you to give away all your secrets, but, what are some of the things that you have found really kind of break the ice for individuals that you're working with that help them relax? Because that's when you get the true shots of who they are as a person, so it can come through on the image.
So you mentioned, before our photo shoot, we met and we talked and we kind of got to know each other a little bit. So I think just building a rapport really helps. And whether it be me or anybody else, having that rapport built, and just finding a photographer that you can connect with, somebody you want to be friends with, there's that old saying, like, people say, oh, I vote for who I want to go have a beer with. It doesn't really work in politics, but in photography, it kind of does. Like, somebody that you can be friendly with and chat with, and you can, there's a little bit of vulnerability there too. Luckily for me, I'm not the most comfortable person doing something like this. But when I have a camera strapped around me and I'm doing something that I feel really confident in, I feel very comfortable. So then that tends to rub off on my clients as well, I think.
Well, and I think even the flexibility of, I had a friend that was like, can I come to your shoot? And in the past, I know there's been instances of like, well, it's just for you, just be prepped or whatever you need. And you were just like, no, bring her down. And then I forgot earrings and the husband had to run earrings down. But that's the beauty of being right in the community in which you're at. It's like, oh, I'm 5 minutes away. If I forgot something, I can run back and get it. Or, not having those time limits of we don't have time to get that thing. And I think that even helps with the client feeling like they're important. So yes, they're paying for the service, but it's also like, oh, but I'm worth it in a lot of ways. And
yeah, you're investing in yourself, investing in you're kind of investing in yourself in a local business at the same time. So it's really great. So I'm going to give all my time and energy to you.
I love it. So you mentioned kind of going out and finding places to go, maybe for senior shots or for other things. What have been some of the your favorite places that you have found, or like the best composition that you find really kind of works for people and gives you lots of options?
So my favorite thing to do is to just kind of wander. To be honest with you, there are some great locations. I've got this really beautiful spot that's like 8 minutes away, where sometimes, like once or twice a year, I'll have a high school senior go sit on this rock that's in the middle of a stream. Well, it takes, a little bit of dedication. You have to walk through 50-degree water to get to that rock, and not everybody wants to do that, but that becomes really picturesque, right? But I also really enjoy just like picking a couple blocks, downtown Indiana, walking around, finding a different perspective of something that we walk by every day. One of my favorite things to do is to share an image and then share what it looks like pulled back. Because a lot of times with the right focal length and the right composition and the right lighting, you can make something look really impressive and dramatic when it's just a normal thing you walk by 20 times a week, like there's a marble wall on the bank uptown that I love because it's reflective, but you would never know if you didn't get the right light on it. Things like that. I really enjoy finding things that you might think are mundane and making them look really dramatic.
I love it. And it brings up where I wanted to go, which is kind of the art of photography. And, have you always had an eye for this kind of thing, or is it something you've learned over time that you can say, that could make a really good backdrop, or that's really, the reflection that I'm looking for? Or, I mean, can you think back and be like, oh no, I was like, I would pick up on that when I was 18? Because for me, I'm not super artistic. I look at a mural and I'm like, that looks like it's something good to photograph.
I wouldn't say that I've always had like the best artistic eye. I think it's something you develop. It's not like some people are born really creative and some people are born really intelligent. That may be true, but also you can work at it, right? How can I play with this composition? How can I play with this lighting? What new lighting techniques can I learn? I've definitely gone through phases, as you start out as a photographer, you do something you think might be really cool and cutting edge, and then you look back a year or two later and you're like, eesh, I don't know about that. It was definitely a learning process for sure. There are workshops you can take to learn to be more creative. Like, I took a workshop several years ago where some of the things stick with me still. One of my favorite photographers, he says, try something every photo session that might not work. Simple as that. Like, that's going to force you to be creative. You're not, like I said, you're not just born creative. Like, you have to learn some of these things too. Like, if you're struggling, one of the things that stuck with me, he said, stick your camera in the dirt. And what does that mean? Literally put your camera on the ground. It gives you a completely different perspective. Trying different angles, you putting things in the foreground, there's a number of different things you can do, but it's definitely a learning process for sure. I look back at my old work and I I kind of want to just delete it from existence, but it's nice to see where you started and the progression that you make.
So it's not just about the tips we get on the iPhone, right? Which is flip your phone upside down and put it to a 0.5, or make sure the subject's in like one of the corner grids of the photo.
Yeah. I mean, those things are fun. Those things are fun, right? Like I like my favorite thing is panoramic, where you start a panoramic, you have somebody in the frame, and then they run around the back of you, and then there's two of them. That's a fun one.
We'll have to try that. I have not done that one before. I did do one where someone ended up looking like they were 2 feet tall because you moved in the middle of it, and when you were going up, it just shrunk them. But we've all heard about the importance of lighting. Like, I'm sitting in my room and I have my ring lights on, and there's reflections. But what else are important qualities to keep in mind when you're thinking about what makes that right shot? So you mentioned things in the foreground, or maybe the angle at what you're looking from. What beyond just lighting is important for the right photo?
Yeah, I will say lighting is the most important thing. Essentially, what we're doing as photographers is just harnessing light and mastering it and using it in different ways. There's so many different things, like you said, maybe you mentioned kind of like rules of thirds. There are things that our eyes as humans are just naturally drawn to, so you have to keep those things in mind. So, but those rules can also be broken a lot too. I really enjoy using a lot of dead space in photos to bring drama. A lot of people don't typically see a portrait as an image with a lot of dead space. And what I mean by that is a lot of space in the image that is not the subject. This is especially fun when you're outdoors with a really dramatic background, putting things in the foreground, using reflections. I use a lot of in-camera effects as well, where I don't know if you've looked at my website much other than the headshot stuff, but I like to use a lot of in-camera effects with projections and reflections and a couple different techniques with prisms, things like that.
Even the lens, right? The equipment you mentioned, having to have specific equipment, and that's, I wouldn't know where to start when it comes to buying a camera or what lens to put on something, or even the importance of that, type of thing. So, for people that are starting out in this, what's the most important piece of equipment other than, the pop-up reflector or the light? What's that actual camera important piece that they need to consider?
Yeah. So when I first started out as a hobbyist with my first DSLR, my big brother actually gave me my first portrait lens, and I still own it today. It's probably worth about $50. At the time, 20 years ago, it was the best thing I'd ever seen because it created these beautiful portraits. It was a 50 millimeter lens on a crop sensor camera, which it's a 1.5 crop. Sorry if I'm getting too technical, but it essentially becomes a 75 millimeter lens. 75 millimeter lens, somewhere around there, 75, 100. It's beautiful for portrait work. I have a 135 that I absolutely love. It creates this amazing effect where you're just completely separating the subject from the background. So my brother would always say, glass is the most important thing. Oddly enough, that lens is mostly plastic. Like I said, cheap one. I've graduated from. I still have that $50 lens in my bag, but I also now have some $2,000 lenses and things like that. Knowing the right tool for the job. Portraits don't typically want to take with a super wide lens because you're going to distort things, and you don't want to make people look wider and more distorted than they are in real life. So yeah, knowing the right tools for the job is definitely important.
Did you ever play around with non kind of people related photography? So, landscape work, things like that. Because my guess is, and correct me if I'm wrong, people tend to specialize in certain things. So whether it's wedding, people, places, animals, and how did you end up saying, well, this is what I really want to focus on, and this is what I want to make my primary kind of subject area?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple different aspects to that. One is I really enjoy portraits. That's the main reason I'm drawn to it. There's an emotion part of it. You can always find a beautiful place, but you can also put a person in that beautiful place, and it becomes even more emotional and meaningful. As soon as you get someone's eyes on camera, there's the sayings like the eyes or the soul or something of the person, but it really is when you see that glow in someone's eye, you see the catch lights in someone's eye, it just draws you in. I think as people, we want to connect with other people. So when I see a beautiful portrait, it's much more impressive and does a lot more to me inside than a beautiful landscape photo. Now, I love looking at them. I love taking them for a hobby. I like to do cityscape stuff. I don't have a lot of time to do that, but I just truly love portrait work. I love giving someone something where they can see how beautiful they are. It sounds so corny, but it really does mean a lot. When I have clients come in and I have people tear up and people just feel good about themselves, it's awesome. It's a little bit of a gift, that you get to give someone while also doing this as my job. It's just I love it.
Do you find it's harder to photograph candid because you do weddings as well, right? And I know when I had my wedding, I was like, I don't want pose stuff. You have us moving the whole time because
Mm-hmm.
otherwise everyone will look at the camera and start to freeze up. And when you've got 15 people, it's harder to make them all comfortable.
Yeah.
Or do you find that, doing kind of that directed work is easier? And maybe that depends on who the photographer is and who the clients are.
Yeah, I mean, I've shot weddings for close to 15 years. But I have found that I more enjoy the work that I can direct, especially one-on-one. I love working with artists, musicians, people I can be creative with. That's why seniors are so much fun, because they tend to like the more creative work. Yeah, I over the years I've done less and less weddings, and I've actually almost removed them completely from my website. There's a tiny little piece that says like additional work that we do. So if somebody really wants to find it and reach out, then I'll have a conversation with them. And I usually do about 5 per year, but I don't want to seek out 20, 30 weddings a year anymore. I do enjoy them. I won't say I don't enjoy them, but there's a specialty. You find a specialty, you find something you really love, you find your niche. And I just really love portraiture. I love working in my studio. I love going around town. Creative lighting is a lot of fun for me. It makes me feel really happy to do creative. Anytime I have a client that wants to work with creative lighting, it just gets me excited. So once I realized, like, I feel this excitement from this type of work more than this, I should probably just put all my efforts into doing what I love.
And I think it's a great message for anyone that's kind of trying to figure out how to not boil the ocean when they, have a passion or something they want to turn into a business, is that it's hard when you're a generalist or the jack of all trades. And to specialize in one thing doesn't necessarily mean you're locking yourself out of all of those stuff. Just like you said, you still do
Right.
weddings,
Yeah.
but it allows you to put more time and energy into the thing that brings you joy, makes you light up just as much as it makes the other people that you're with, kind of resonate with that feeling. So in looking at being in Indiana, I found you by a Google search. I went photographers in Indiana, PA, and it popped up and I was like, oh, he's down the street. I should look. And, looked at the portfolio, looked at your Instagram. Being here for the time you have, having the connections you have, do you get a lot of word of mouth? Do you do a lot of marketing at this point? Like, from that, when you were first building things to kind of now, it just seems like I just tell everyone, I'm like, oh, you need a headshot, go to Jon. Here's the website to follow it, including people not in this area who I'm like, well, if you're coming to visit, or you're
I
going to be
appreciate that.
around Pittsburgh, but word of mouth is still, I think, really powerful.
For
But
sure.
do you still do marketing a lot? Do you focus more on kind of that community space?
I don't really have much of a marketing budget. Luckily, most of my clients are word of mouth. I think you're kind of a rare case. It's typically rare that people find me on Google. People find me on Google all the time, but a lot of times it tends to be someone that just wants something really quick. So as soon as I mention, like, hey, can you come in? We'll chat for 30 minutes, get to know each other, plan out your session. If that's too much for them, we're typically not going to work together. Because I do prefer to meet with everyone, even if it's over Zoom or a call, 20, 30 minutes just to go over how everything works. But yeah, luckily, word of mouth's been great. I'm in a networking group that I really love, a BNI group. That's been helpful. But yeah, I think I've been lucky to be kind of known here now as the person to go to for headshots, and probably one of the top people to go to for seniors as well, depending on style. There's some other great photographers that really just, part of it depends on style as well, like what you're looking for. And sometimes it's a budgetary thing. There's all kinds of things involved with it, with what choices are made for photographers. But yeah, I do market when I do like an event, like I have coming up, like once or twice a year, I have an event that I market. But yeah, mostly word of mouth, I would say. A lot of repeat clients. A lot of people will come in like every couple years and do a refresh, which is great. I always say if your headshot's older than your cell phone, you need a new headshot.
Well, but to that point, there are also ones that you don't need to redo every 2 minutes. So I loved when we did ours, and it was like, I think one of the things you mentioned was, don't wear something you don't wear every day. And so
Mm-hmm.
one of my looks was a tank top and a button-up shirt
Yeah.
that was open, because that's how I present myself, not the blazer that I bust out only if I go to a conference. And so the idea of a headshot having to be some professional kind of, I don't want to say stuffy, but a little bit stuck up, is not necessarily the case. And so to be able to just get comfortable with that and to do it, and then to be able to share that, and now I have 6 that I rotate through, using in different fashions. They're gonna last me until I go a little bit more gray, until I lose a little bit more weight, and I'm like, all right, now I've got to get more reflective. But the way I think you take them, and probably anyone that does good portrait and headshot work is that standpoint of it reflects the person more than just the hairstyle that they're in, or the makeup they had on that day, so that it does still resonate, and it's not someone going, oh, that doesn't look like you when they meet with you, because they can still get your personality through it.
Yeah. Yeah. When I first started taking headshots, I called them what everyone else called them. This was 8 years ago or something. Corporate headshots. Well, I don't call them that anymore because I don't want this corporate stuffy. I take corporate headshots all the time, but we're not going to do them in that way where it's just sit here, pose your arms. I work with law firms, financial firms, doctors, professors, but I still try to put a little bit of a modern touch on things and make it feel more comfortable and more approachable. Rather than that, everybody pictures like the banker sitting on the chair, like sitting on the stool with the blue back, like that just plain, boring, skip right over it type of image. I want something that's going to kind of grab people's attention. And I think, like, I'm thinking about your image that I've seen floating around that we made, and it just grabs I know I took it, and but it grabs my attention. It's like, it's so approachable. You look so genuine in those images, which I love.
Yeah, and I'm guessing it's the one where I'm laughing. That's my favorite one that I try to put on everything. But it was perfect, not only for a podcast, but for a website where you're trying to show that even when you have a tough situation, you can find your way out of it. And you can kind of, it lightens things a little bit. And I do think it's great. I had a federal headshot where I was very stuffy and the flag was behind me and everything. It was great. They touched me up wonderfully, but it doesn't evoke the same emotion as something like that, which is, if you get on the phone with me, I really hope you laugh at some point, no matter what the situation is that we're dealing with. So we talked about the beauty of kind of word of mouth and being in the community like this, but what have been some limitations maybe of being in a space like this that's not 20 minutes from an airport, or, where there is, I hate to say, lots of kind of structured locations to go to? What have you found there are things that you've had to learn creative ways to work around being in Indiana?
Yeah, for sure. As much as I really do love this place. There are some limitations, especially when you have a business, which I'm sure lots of small business owners can attest to. It's just less people, there's less clients. So you really can only niche down so far. The city where I'm from, Louisville, Kentucky, there's many, many photographers that have one niche, maybe two. Here, I mostly have two, but I like I said, I do some other things as well. I do lots of things that people don't even realize. I do some real estate work, where listing photos and things like that. There's things that like fill in the gaps, So that's the biggest limitation. I wish I could only do headshots and seniors and that's it. And it's primarily what I do and what I specialize in, but it would be really great if I could only focus on those two things.
Yeah, Indiana high school is not the same size as the North Allegheny High School in the area, which
Right.
has like 1,000 seniors every year, something crazy. So definitely a little different from that end. And now, from is that something that eventually you would be like, well, I might get to a point where I'm going to travel more or reach out further, or I guess the preference would be, let's continue to make it work how it is? Because I think that people, and we see this a lot in the fashion industry and stuff like that, they just keep pushing and reaching kind of for the next thing that makes them relevant. And maybe that means expanding, or we're going to go to a different style or do all this kind of thing, just because maybe it's slow for a little bit or you're not the top name. Are you in a place that would ever be something you feel like you might be up against, or you're like, no, hey, I've done this long enough. I can probably
Yeah,
make this work?
I think I'm in a good situation right now. Ideally, in the future, I would have an associate photographer. I get so many inquiries that we're just not a good fit. Um, Whether it be, budgetary concerns or whatever. It's typically the biggest roadblock. I have been doing this a long time. I am really confident in my work, so I do charge accordingly. But there are a lot of people I would love to work with. So it would be really great to have an associate to work with me, so I could still take on those jobs and have just a different part of my studio, or even a different studio for those jobs. there's still a lot of people that need good work, that don't have the budget. So it does always kind of break my heart because I want to work with, when I meet good people, I want to work with them and create something great for them. But I have to also like stand true to my pricing, and it's, that's fair to my other clients as well. So in the future, I would love to do that, take on an associate that I trust, and then maybe even have like a secondary brand, which would help if I ever want to retire one day.
Well, and I think it's a great, mentioning that also helps. And I've talked on a couple other episodes about this, about ways to give gifts to people. And so I'm thinking like, hey, someone's turning 18, they're turning 30. Instead of buying them something for their house, contribute to a photo shoot. Like say, hey, if you want to get a new headshot because you're thinking of a career change, I'd love to help pay for that. So there's other ways I think that we can even think about supporting those around us for things like this that maybe we don't even realize, that individual may really want. We think about dress for success, but sure, now you've got the outfit, but do you have the image to go with that for when you're, sending things in? So I think it's a good reminder of presents and gifts and gratitude don't have to be a physical object and can be a service in a lot of ways. And those services are often right here in our backyard to tap
Yeah,
into. So
I love that. I love that you mentioned that. I actually, with my own kids, I mean, I've tried to really get away from buying things. They tend to really, really love the experience-based gifts. So I love that you mentioned that. I don't even push that as really. I don't talk about it much, but I think that's a great idea. Genuinely, even if it's not with me, I think buying someone a photo session is an awesome gift because it's a tangible thing that you get to hold on to for a long, long, long time. It's not going to be some trendy gift that you're going to get sick of in 6 months.
yeah, and that's a new love language. Apparently, that's one of the new ones they've added on is like experiences with someone. So I think, and especially if you want to even do it together, I think that's a beautiful kind of thing. But one of the questions I definitely have in regards to, you mentioned having an associate, and I think a lot of people have found a new love for capturing images because we do all have access on our phones. We have a lot of people doing social media and content creation and stuff. But what are some of those things that, let's say, I do want to consider? Maybe this is a side career that I want to start touching on, or a secondary option, or, I hate to say, even someone going into kind of, hey, I'm reaching retirement. I'd love to, see what new things. Are there classes they should take? Or is there, you mentioned kind of reading up or studying on different things? What are those first elements they should look at?
That's a really good question. I have so many people who have asked me something similar. It's just a matter of if they actually take the advice. So I've got my sixth or seventh different intern starting this summer, and I'm sure they'll ask me similar questions as well. I always tell people, read and practice. Read and practice. That's exactly how I'm completely self-taught. Yes, I've taken a couple workshops, but that was after being established and everything. I completely taught myself everything that I know, probably 90% of it. And you have to go out and practice just like anything else. I mean, my son wants to be good at the violin. He's got to practice his violin. If you want to try a technique, if you want to learn a technique, you need to go try it over and over and over. It's not just going to come like that. So it's really simple. It's not a complicated formula. It's, if you want to be good at this thing, you have to practice this thing and do it a lot. I've had interns that, had this really great technical skill, but they can't talk to people. So, and that's kind of important when you're taking portraits. So I've also had kind of the other way around, like super friendly, easy to talk to. You can get the client really comfortable, but then you can't remember your tools, So it's just about doing, practicing, finding something that you like. Finding your niche is important too, because I'm not a newborn photographer, for instance. So I'm a great photographer, I can say that confidently, but if you put me in a room with a newborn and said, make beautiful newborn photos, it would be really challenging for me. So finding something that you love and you can pour everything into, that's helpful as well. 'Cause then you're doing the same thing over and over, getting those repetitions in.
And I love that you touch on the newborn piece because that takes a very special person to wrap the
It does.
newborn. They can't
Yeah.
respond back to you, and so thinking about the type of work that you want done and finding the right person to fit that. And I guess if I look at it from my perspective, if you meet with someone or you speak to a photographer and you're not feeling it there, that you shouldn't feel pressured to use that individual. That's the whole why I loved kind of the meet and greet ahead of time is it's a chance to say, maybe this isn't going to be
Yeah.
the right match.
And I refer people out all the time, like depending on what they're looking for. Like I've had people come and say, well, can you take these photos, but can you make them look like this? Well, that's not my style, but I know somebody that does that, I'm happy to do that. I've got lots of great friends that are photographers, and, there's enough clients for everyone. There really are. So, and wanted to go back to, I was saying, find the thing you love and pour everything into that, like your type of photography you want to do. But also at the beginning, try everything. Try different things. Like I never had a dream growing up. I want to be a headshot photographer. Like that wasn't my dream as a little boy, but I started doing it and I realized, wow, I really enjoy this and I can make them look a little different and I can put my own spin on it. Than like that typical corporate headshot. So try everything, see what you like, then go down that path.
Awesome. As we kind of shift into close out of the conversation, I'm going to ask you about your favorite coffee because I know that that's important. But before we get there, who are gave it away? Who are some of that you mentioned? Some of your photographers that you've looked up to and recommend advice that they've had. Who are some of the photographers that you have found really influential in your life?
So my favorite photographer is a guy named, well, there's two. One is a couples photographer named Sam Hurd. He is out of the DC area. He's phenomenal. He has come up with a lot of these in-camera effects that I like to use, and he's one of the workshops that I took. Workshops are very expensive, so I have to really love your work to go to your workshop. So he's one of the workshops I've done. Even though he does couples work primarily or almost exclusively, his techniques and his composition and his style is just beautiful. So look him up. Another guy is Nick Fancher out of Columbus. I was gifted his book, one of his books on color theory and light, and I just fell in love with all his work and ended up doing his workshop as well. Learned a lot from him. Really, really super talented. He's worked for ESPN and big brands like that, but does only his style. He has a very, very distinct style, and no matter what the client is, no matter what big brand it is, they hire him to do his thing. That's ideally what every photographer wants. Like you want to be able to do what you love, whether it's for McDonald's or whoever, or Jimmy down the street. So those two, I would say, if you want to just see something inspiring, go check them out.
Awesome. We will tag them in this. Jon, would you ever do a workshop?
I've done some workshops, yeah.
Hey, just putting it out there. We've highlighted your specialty here. So.
Yeah, I've done some lighting workshops. I did one, my first one, I don't know, 6-7 years ago. It was really fun. I did it really cheap. It was like $300, and me and a bunch of photographers spent the whole day together. Spent like 8 hours together. We had a couple of models in the studio. We started from like more basic lighting, like headshot type lighting. We did creative, outdoor lighting. We did reception lighting for people learning to take photos at wedding receptions and things like that. So that was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, maybe it's an option again in the near future, and we'll get some business to Indiana, PA for it. But that being said, we're local. You've mentioned kind of your favorite coffee there, which when we were chatting, we were talking about kind of our favorite places in the area. TJ Fairchild, this is a plug, the owner of Commonplace Coffee, is going to be on a future podcast. Recommendation from you yourself, Jon, and then I was able to reach out and get in touch with him. But what are some of the other places here in Indiana that you love and kind of make this community the place that you want to be for a long time to come?
Yeah, there's so many that I really enjoy. So Commonplace is great, and what's cool about them is their coffee is served in lots of other places too. Like the Artist Hand Espresso Bar and Gallery is a beautiful place owned by a beautiful human being named Brian Jones. I love Levity. I think everybody loves Levity. We loved going to Josephine's for dinner. I'm going to leave places out, but these are some of my favorite, the places that I frequent all the time. Um, there's a lot of great little spots just to pop into uptown, just taking the kids for a walk or taking the dog for a walk uptown, and just popping into a new local place. Create and Curate is really cool. They've got a bunch of different things from different local artists and different things like that. What about you? What are some of your favorite local spots?
So I think what I've really enjoyed and was where we ran into each other just the other week is that a lot of our local shops are working together to host events. So you have Create and Curate, Cattywampus, The Paper Garden, Baker's Arms, Daily Bread Bagel Company, like all coming together. And what I love is it's not a competition. They each have a little bit of uniqueness associated with them, even though they carry each other's stuff in a lot of cases. And it's like, all right, you get a one-stop shop. You can kind of hit everywhere in two streets. Philly Candle Bar, love that place. It just smells amazing every time you go into it. But there's so many unique experiences, and I joke that if someone wants to come in for a weekend, I can fill your whole weekend up. Like there's all kind of places we can stop. We'll get about 10 different cups of coffee along the way. We'll get a whole bunch of different baked goods, Amadeus for some Turkish, items, or down the street to Naps or Josephine's. And I think that it's it's a little hidden gem from that perspective. No matter what you want, you can probably find a hint of it here, and you can find variations of it along the way. And I'm just a few blocks off the main drag, and it's so nice to be able to walk to it and still be able to get to Blue Spruce Park or other places that give you a little bit more space and everything. The drive to the airport's annoying. That's the one thing I I don't like, but I'm not traveling as
My friends and family from where I'm from, they asked me. Somebody recently asked me how far it was from the airport. It's an hour and a half. I'm like, oh my gosh! It's like, well, we're only an hour and 10 maybe from Pittsburgh, but it's on the other side of Pittsburgh, which is kind of annoying. So that's always rough. So I don't even bother flying home usually because you can drive in the same amount of time.
exactly. And I think too, I've been here for 2 years now, so I, didn't move far, but I'm still finding new things. There's Radziki Cafe out at the Jimmy
Oh yeah,
Stewart Airport, has the best breakfast burrito because they fry the cheese on the outside. It's incredible. Very fatty, but very, very good.
yeah. Riziki Cafe's a really great business to. They'd be someone great to talk to because they give back a lot. Um, they donate their tips to different organizations that are in need, and um, yeah, really, really great place, and the food's great.
And you literally sit there and you can see prop planes out the window because it's right at the airport. It's the little tiny airport here. But we have health and care next down the street. We have a hospital, that's still independent. They're not part of like the big systems. And I think all of that makes this still feel like it's a little protected niche in a lot of ways and hasn't necessarily, or it's kept its charm. And, mentioned the airport's named the Jimmy Stewart Airport because this is his hometown. And that still felt. We have lighting up for Christmas now around the George Lasso's The Moon, and it does really, I think, resonate. And even though there's lots of opportunity to improve and to advance over time, it's home, and it really does kind of have that feel. And I think that's reflected in the fact that you've not left.
A very homey place. I tell people all the time that haven't been here, it's like a little postcard town. It really is. And for instance, my kids can walk down the street and play Pokemon Go, and I don't have to worry too much about them. My one of my buddies back home, he's like, I would never let my kids do that. It's just too dangerous. Like that's a genuine concern. I mean, like people are people want to move towards cities because there are a lot of opportunities, but you have to kind of balance. Okay, what are the schools like? How safe is it? Um, Things like that. Like I do really love how close knit this community is. Like not only is there less crime, but I also know half the businesses uptown probably recognize my kids, and if they see them in trouble, they're going to help them out. So it's a nice place to live.
It sure is. Well, that being said, if you are within kind of the transportation range of Indiana, PA, and you're looking for headshots. Jon, we will tag your website, your Instagram, anything else you want to share so people can find you, find ways to contact you. And, again, if you're not here, that's fine. In your community, whether it's, a corner of New Mexico, Alaska, or, Chicago, odds are you've got amazing, talented small business owners right around you that we tend to focus on during the holidays, which is when we're recording this, and Small Business Saturday and all that kind of stuff. But to be honest, it's year round. It's that component. And you heard, hey, winter time for the northern photographers is a tough time. So if you're looking to spruce up a headshot, if you're looking to have some of those kind of indoor moments or maybe an outdoor wonderland thing, look into it, reach out, keep those businesses up and running, because it really is the heart of how we stay connected to our communities, our people, and our networks. And Jon, anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up today about you, about your business, or anything we've talked about?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was fun. You made it really really easy. I knew you were going to have a big smile on your face the whole time, which makes me feel great. Um, but yeah, like you said, supporting local is so important. I try to always support local businesses if I can, because it really does make a difference. Like, you're feeding those people's kids, as that might sound dramatic, but when if you go down the street to your local shop rather than going on to Amazon, like, you're making a difference in that person's life. So definitely shop local. I feel really strongly about that. Luckily, we have a lot of really great local businesses here. You really don't need to go to a big corporate business very often around here, because we have so many options and so many different arenas. So I just want to say that, but also I am having this headshot mini session day coming up. I do this once a year, where instead of paying a session fee, you only pay for the image, and you get discounted images. So that's for the people that just want to pop in for those quick couple photos, where if you don't need that extended personalized session, a lot of times I'm doing 20 to 30 of these back to back throughout the day. So I give a discount by having a volume of clients that day.
So I should bring you a 6-pack from Levity when I come in for mine, right? Because you'll need it when it's all
I'll
set.
need that at the end. Yeah.
Well, great. I really appreciate the conversation, and really the official kind of kickoff of this Mr. Rogers-esque feel of Won't You Be My Neighbor. It'll be followed by a lot of other great folks from the Indiana and Southwestern PA community. But Jon, you really set the tone for it, and I appreciate you. And hopefully you'll get some new clientele or new insights from this, and looking forward to chatting soon and seeing you, hopefully just down the street at one of our local places.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.